How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. Dalton Risner coming across on the TikTok, trying to get recorded apparently by the, or not recorded, but recruited by the Cincinnati Bengals. Risner saying he would love to play for the Cincinnati Bengals, and apparently replying to the guy and saying, hey, no, they haven't reached out. And that makes us question, should the Cincinnati Bengals be looking at a guy like Dalton Risner, the guard for the Minnesota Vikings the past couple seasons? He played for the Broncos. And, you know, the first thing I always ask when I see stuff like this, because we're seeing contract projections for this man, you know, right around 4 or 5 million a year. And the first thing I always ask is it too good to be true? Why are 31 other teams passing up on this guy? Because I feel like as fans, you know, I talk about this a lot. As fans, it's easy for us to say, wow, the Bengals missed this guy. The Bengals missed this guy. The Bengals missed this guy. Why didn't they get this guy? 31 other teams also did not get that guy. Happens a lot. And Risner he's something. He was excellent last season. Didn't allow any pressure. Didn't allow, not no pressure, but didn't allow any sacks. 0 penalties. If there's something I want in my guard, that's it. And the knock on him seems to be he's not very good at run blocking. And I always like to kind of go down the list of, you know, I always like to look back. I like to see what the fans of that team are saying about this guy. And you really look back, I mean, there was a battle between him and Ed Ingram in a situation. People going back and forth, Ingram in, should it be him in? But for the most part, there wasn't a lot of, wow, he was a black hole kind of situation. He wasn't a big problem. There was the one, I watched a clip of this man. I don't know if we could roll that, but there was a clip of this man. It was like, look at him. Like, you know, people were like, watch this clip. Look how bad he does. And it's funny, you've read the comments, because there was a back and forth of like, doesn't seem like a bad rep. Seems like a bad rep. Doesn't seem like a bad rep. Like they did all that work to find this bad rep. The man pass blocked for 4 seconds. Could you imagine if the Bengals' worst offensive lineman, their biggest problem was, you know, he could only protect the quarterback for 4 seconds? I'm so jealous it ain't even funny. That was wild to me. And that was their worst lineman, because second ranked pass blocking unit in the league last season. And the thing I say, before we dive into the numbers, the thing I look at here is, you know, let's pause for a second, because this guy's a stud blocking in the pass game. I think a lot of people agree with that. Great pass blocker, kept Sam Darnold upright. The concern was in the run game. And I always question, you know, because in a second we're going to go over these statistics and I say, how much can we focus on, you know, the Pro Football Focus grades, and how much of that is an actual concern, and how much of it is, you know, are you drawing it? Is, you know, are people really seeing this? How much weight are we going to put on this? Because, you know, for how bad he was in the run game for an interior lineman, I mean, this was a team. This by no stretch of the imagination was this some. You know, Chase Brown, Travion Henderson, you know, 26-year-old Chris Johnson having running backs that were running wide, right? These were ground and pound up the middle guys, meaning your guards were very important. Aaron Jones, 30 years old, still running 4.5 yards per carry on this Vikings team. Cam Akers somehow has a job. Has been, you know, came out, a lot of expectations, high hopes for Cam Akers in LA, struggled all the time. Benched after bench after bench, cut, you know, they just never figured it out. 4.6 yards per carry for the Vikings last season, a career year. Now a backup, but from a yards per carry perspective, a career year. So again, maybe he isn't the greatest of players, but if you look at the way this Vikings offense played last season with the personnel they had, I'd be happy to have me one of them offensive linemen, even if it's the worst one. But that's what I'm trying to figure out is, so what are the 31 other teams besides the Bengals not seeing in this guy? Is it a locker room problem? It don't seem to be a payment problem, because if he wants $4.5 million a year. If I'm the Bengals, I'd throw him 5 or 6 just to do it. He doesn't start. You have nothing to lose. There's nothing left for you to do in free agency, really, but try to build the best possible offensive line you can for Joe Burrow going into next season. But this is why we say be careful. I think at this point in time, how Pro Football Focus can be challenging. because the Minnesota Vikings kept Blake Brandel. Now, Blake Brandel seems like he's got good praise. Seems like people really like this guy over there in Minnesota. Kind of a sneaky guard. People enjoy him. But this is why it's interesting to me. And mind you, they signed Will Fries. Will Fries, $17 million a year. If they wanted to keep, money wasn't a problem keeping this guy in Minnesota. They did upgrade at the guard position. They said, all right, let's upgrade. That is the one thing. Is like Minnesota did say we can't upgrade at this position, and they said we're gonna throw this guy $17 million a year. But the thing was, it was clear cut. They could have kept Risner. They did keep Brandel. Similar contract values. It was coming across. One, obviously, he's under contract for 2 more years, but they're going to probably get similar money, maybe a little bit more to Risner. But here's the numbers according to Pro Football Focus. Brandel, 57.2 overall grade. That's compared to Risner, 67. Brandel, 11 penalties. Risner, 0. 7 sacks. Risner, 0. Pressures, 41. Risner, 16. Even the run block grade, where, hey, the run block's the problem. They both clocked in at 57. So for me, I look at all this and I say, well, what's not adding up here? Because if there's people I'm going to trust, it's the Vikings organization and the Vikings fans here. Why? Because this is the second-ranked pass-blocking unit team in the league last season. It was dominant. They won football games because they kept their quarterback upright. There's no question about it. When Sam Darnold is looking like an MVP out there, you are doing something right around him. And if this organization says, oh, we can do better at right guard, and they let him out the door, obviously I'm going to question that, because they could have paid him $6 million and spent that money elsewhere. That's the first red flag that comes to my mind. But then when I see people pointing out and saying, hey, man, the biggest problem is, I guess they wanted a more complete guard. And you could look at the Vikings and say, well, if they're not going to pay, if they keep McCarthy and they don't pay a quarterback, they don't need to spend all that money. They have money to put somewhere else. Might as well beef up the offensive line more. They see how well it's working. I mean, I get it, I guess. I can see that reasoning. If that was their thought, they said, let's get a more complete player that can run block a little bit more. We already have the other guy under contract for 3 years. But I don't think his job was ever in question. But you look at that and you wonder, it's like something about these numbers do not math for me. I could be completely off base. But they're both guards. They're both guards. Obviously, one would stay at his home position. But it really has me head scratching what it is that I'm missing here. Because if I'm the Bengals, I'm throwing this guy 2 or 3 million, 2 or 3 years. Again, if it's 5 or 6, anything, honestly, anything under 10, you can figure it out. Anything under 10, you can figure it out. If you have to waive the guy a year or two, you do it. But if you're the Bengals, you're trying to find a cog at the guard position. I will throw anything at that position to see if it sticks until we find the best possible player. If you want to draft the other one, that's fine. But right now, there is holes at the guard position, and you have nothing to lose. Like I said, I'm trying to piece this together. At the end of the day, though, this isn't a Bengals team that's got 2 starters at the guard position. We're like, oh, should you take a chance on this? No, you're trying to figure it out. And you have nothing to lose if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. It feels like a slam dunk. Pay this man if he wants to be here. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But it feels like a low risk, high reward type of signing if you're the Bengals. Because again, we talk about, the first thing that comes to mind is La'el Collins. It didn't work out with Collins. He had the injury problems. They tried to move him to a position he didn't play as much. As you pluck a guy off of a stud offensive line, like the Cowboys. Now, La'el was more of a backup. This guy's not been a backup. He's been a starter. But you talk about a stud offensive line. If you could take a weak link of a stud offensive line because they wanted to upgrade, I'm willing to take that chance. Because you was a bottom 5 offensive line across all metrics again last season. So to not bring in anybody to try to fix that problem, to me, is mind-blowing. Minus a mid-tier guy he signed to be a backup, really. Bringing in as many as he can. Try to improve. It'd be like the Bengals, the Bengals letting their number 3 wide receiver walk. To the Bengals, you can afford to let it walk. It's just your number 3. Well, that's because you got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins here. Now if... let's figure this one out for you. Maybe the Titans? Titans an option? Titans? Maybe the Colts. No, maybe the Colts. Titans will work. Now Titans let their number 3 go. I might not want that one. You know, perspective, team situational awareness is everything. And maybe this guy's just going under the radar because of how good Minnesota was, and it was easy to point out the one flaw in a stud offensive line. But that doesn't mean he can't be an impactful player that can bring the Bengals up. I mean, he's not going to turn him into an elite offensive line, but if you can move those numbers up 3-4 spots in the rankings, you know, 28th to 25th pass blocking, hey, that's an upgrade for a cheap contract. And then you try to build around that. You know, you bring in somebody in the draft, you move up another 4 or 5 spots. Now all of a sudden you're top 10 across the board. That I'd hate to see the Bengals with that kind of time. I'm still laughing at the thought 4 seconds to pass block this guy, and they're having a problem with it. I just couldn't imagine what the Bengals could do with Joe Burrow in that kind of time. Take the chance, though. Take the chance. I know the Bengals said they was done with the guard position. I just wonder. I'm going back and forth on this one. I still ain't over it. Because why this guy wait until September to sign? Why is it 2 one-year deals? Why are no other teams jumping on that? Because anytime somebody signs late like that for a low value, you have to assume teams just aren't interested. If he was signing late and getting $25 million a year holding out, sure. But to sign for a low contract, kind of late free agent signing, those are the kind of guys that are they're borderline not making a team, you have to believe. I don't know. A lot of question marks. But I am willing to take a chance. I'll take any chance if it means Joe Burrow's got a chance to stay healthier and stand upright longer in that pocket. Nonetheless, love y'all's thoughts. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.